Guys, guys, are you awake? Very nice, because you don't want to miss this one. I have the absolute honor to not talk to you anymore. You are free of me now. But I have the absolute honor to present to you one of my best friends, one of the people who's had the biggest impact of me becoming what I am today. A person who, we had here a little bit the game of, I'm that many years old, I'm that many years in UX or design. Well, guess what? He's gonna beat us in all these charts. So, Eric just turned 70 recently, which is very admirable to get to. And Eric has worked in design, UX, theater, storytelling for, what is it, Eric, 50 years?
A long time.
More than 50 years? There were no computers back then.
We're gonna get
Eric
to that in a minute.
is great at piano. Sorry, someone said something? What?
I said something, but that doesn't matter.
Ah, you did say something?
Yes.
You wanted to say something? Okay. So, guys, before I talk here bullshit, because you see I'm not promising too much, Eric is going to blow your mind, and everything I learned pretty much in presentation skills, this is the one guilty for. So, enjoy, everyone. Eric Reiss.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for coming back. It's been a long day. I need to ask you a couple of questions. Number one, is there anyone besides myself who is not from Bulgaria? Oh, where are you from? Serbia. All three of you. Beograd? I flew over Serbia yesterday. You've heard a lot of English today, so I've decided I'm going to do this in Danish. Because... Nej, jeg er virkelig glad for at se jer. Det er hyggeligt at være her i Bulgarien igen. Det har været mange år. Og I smiler, og I assume that your Danish is about as good as my Bulgarian. So, well, all right, we'll stick to English. The nice thing about presenting in Europe, and you have to excuse the American accent, I was born in the United States. Can't help that. But one thing that you can do in Europe that you can't do in the United States is that you can drink and present at the same time. Actually, this is usability testing. This is a good Bulgarian red wine. I can recommend it. I think you will enjoy this. It's quite lovely. I'll put it here. Who wants to hold this for safekeeping? No, I know, Irene, it's not safekeeping. Okay, well, let's get to the point. There's some thoughts, some things that worry me. How many of you got into UX during the pandemic? How many of you have been in UX for less than 4 or 5 years? Okay, so there are quite a number of you who are really quite junior in this. There are a lot of you who have been in the industry longer, and you're probably going to say, well, I've heard all this bullshit before. So the wine is over there, and you're welcome to leave. These are actual bullets. So we're going to start with the War of the Worlds. I think... I don't know where I was smoking that night, but I was thinking of movie titles. So that was kind of my theme, and then, oh, never mind. So let's start with War of the Worlds. Back in 2000, there was the world's first Information Architecture Summit in Boston. And we were all given a piece of paper, because nobody could really define it. And everybody was asked to put down what they thought information architecture was. And this is what we got. And of course, you know, all of our clients immediately understood what we did. The information architects are still fighting about what information architecture is. I'm not going to bore you with my definition right now, but this reminds me of the old Arab proverb about the blind men trying to describe an elephant. And one gets a hold of the tusk and says, "Oh, it's like a spear," and the other gets hold of the trunk and says, "No, no, no, it's like a snake," and the other grabs the leg and says, "Oh, it's like a tree." They're all right, and yet none of them have described the elephant. And that's kind of what the UX industry is like. I see UX as this big umbrella that covers interaction design and service design and information architecture and content strategy and all kinds of things. So even though we call ourselves UX designers, we probably aren't. We design a part of user experience somewhere along the way. And Milan said, "Oh, I'm going to make you instant UX designers." I got news for you. You've been UX designers since you were born. It's true. You just don't think about it. How many of you cook food for your family? Hello, this is user experience. So let's just go back a little bit. This is, if you've read the Gospel according to John, this is the wedding at Cana. And Christ comes in and turns 6 vats of water into wine. Now, I told this story at a conference in England, and there was a very strict Church of England woman who came over to me and said, "You realize, of course, that he turned the water into wine to show his disciples that he was the true Messiah." Well, that's true, but you don't think they drank the wine at the wedding? And I mean, honestly, you know, anybody who decides to make alcohol as their first miracle, I mean, it can't be all bad. That's user experience. Martina talked about all the various jobs to do, touch points, and so on. When we do customer journey maps, we get lots of stickies on the wall. And invariably, you need to start to thin these out. And some are projects, you know, are we going to shelve this, or are we going to wait for later, or what are we going to do? And one of the things I learned to do with clients is to take these touch points or projects and put them on a graph. You know, these are things I actually can influence. These are things I cannot influence. I can't stop it from raining, but I can make the situation better by at least providing umbrellas at some outdoor event or pavilions or someplace where people can go and stay dry. There are also things that are important for the business, and I was delighted to hear so many speakers talk about the importance of showing the people up at the top the money. That's really what they care about. So there are things that are important to the business, and then there are other things, fuck it. And so you can plot these things out. And those of you who are leading teams, invariably you're going to have people, often developers, who have some pet project that they think is absolutely wonderful. And they're going to you can't really do much about it. And it's not good for the business. Screw it. These are the things you want to be concentrating on. And clients understand that. If you can start to describe at least the business value of whatever they're going to do, and that it is, in fact, something that is doable, then do it. Start there. All this other stuff, 6 months, a year, you can look at it again. Is this important? Should we have done this? The other thing that people talk about these days is, well, it's not user experience, it's customer experience. They're very proud of that. It's customer experience. It doesn't work that way. I'd like to introduce you, well, I mean, we've had other cats, so, you know, I'm just trying to keep up the trend here. This is Gus the cat, and Gus the cat used to eat Whiskas. And this is lamb with peas in his little bowl. Okay. It appeals to me. It sounds good. Lamb with peas. I like lamb. I like peas. Nobody actually talked to Gus about this because when he was done eating, he had spit out all the peas. I talked to our veterinarian, and he said, well, you know, cats will chew on your houseplants, but they will naturally not eat things that are green because they lack the enzyme that is necessary to metabolize chlorophyll, so it makes them sick. Now, why Whiskas would make a cat food that might make my cat sick, I don't know. But the point is, if you're a customer, that implies a financial relationship. And not once in all the years we had Gus the cat did he ever go to the store and pick out his own cat food. He just didn't do it. We had long talks about this. Gus, why did you not get the cat food? Meow, meow, meow. So I'm the customer, but I'm also the user. Can I read the packaging? Can I open it? Is it easy to get into the bowl? It actually wasn't. So I'm a user, but I'm also the customer because I'm the one who pays for it. The cat is the user because he's the one who got to eat it. So the point is, a customer is always a user, but a user is not always a customer. And this is an incredibly important differentiation. So when we see Venn diagrams like this, from the Interaction Design Association, I mean, this stuff turns up in my feed all the time, and it drives me crazy because that's just not the way it works. It's the other way around. Customer experience is certainly the most visible part of what we do, or at least a very visible part, in the same way that service design is very, very visible. A lot of the stuff that we do backstage that nobody sees, it's part of the user experience, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. I'm getting my picture taken. So lesson number one, the more our communities fight, and they do, the longer it's going to take to educate the business. Because everybody wants to own user experience, and I don't think anyone can own user experience. We can all work in a part of user experience. That's my message. Okay, moving on. How many of you remember a movie called Space Cowboys? Yeah, 4 of you. All right. Okay, well, so the basic plot is NASA has this satellite, and something's gone wrong with the software, and there are these 4 aging astronauts who were responsible for designing the original satellite. And so they get set up on the space shuttle, and they're going to fix the software because nobody else can do it. Nobody knows how to code this stuff anymore. How many of you know COBOL? Fortran? Oh, good Lord. Congratulations, it's a useful skill. But then this kind of stuff comes up. Oh, you want a career in UX? No experience? No problem. Click here. And no, that's not the way it works. And to that end, I chose some books that I think are important. Books that have been important for me. No, they weren't published last year. Are there others? Yes, there are lots of others. But these are certainly ones that I think are worth starting with. And just to show that I really did it for you, if you notice down in the corner here, we can make that a little bigger. I mean, you know, you got to personalize these things. You've got to show empathy. And what were all those points I was supposed to remember from this morning? What? The body. Yes, lovely, lovely. Yeah, well, we like you too. Yeah. Goodbye. These are good books. There's another book, though, from about 1999, 2000. If you don't feel comfortable reading English, if you're going to only read one book, this is the book to read. It's by Jesse James Garrett, and it's wonderful. And when you're done reading that, you're going to understand that you've been doing UX all of your life in one form or another. So the point I'm trying to make is that how many of you have Macintoshes? Yeah, you see, Macintoshes have personality. I have a PC. It has an attitude. Fuck off. This was very interesting. Mario Puzo, the author of The Godfather, was he had never written a screenplay before, so he bought a book on how to write a screenplay, and it said, yeah, you want to learn? In the first chapter, it said, study Godfather 1. He said, oh, all right. He was a natural. There are lots of books. This is Julia Child's book, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. If you have an old Jaguar, this is a book that will teach you how to repair it. But it's not going to make you a chef, and it's not going to make you a skilled mechanic. So the books are fine. They're a start. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. But I think the fact that you're all here and you're still awake after all these hours and all of these new thoughts, there are three things that are important. You have to have curiosity, you have to have empathy, and you have to have passion for what you're doing. And without those qualities, you can't be a UX designer. You don't necessarily have to jump up and down and be animated and whatever. But inside, you have to feel these things. You have to really care about what you're doing. So, you've got to respect empirical experience, because there are a lot of us who have been in the industry a long time, and we solved problems 30 years ago that are still turning up, because it's not necessarily getting better. And I find that very, very frustrating. On the other hand, you got to take a new direction. If you can see something better or a better way to do it, then do it. Education is a slow process. It'll come. It'll come, but it takes time. And we still have to educate our clients. That's why the infighting needs to stop. Okay, from China with love. Martina, where are you? This is for you. This is a Rolex Daytona. Conservatively, if I do the math right, we're talking about somewhere around 500,000 liv. Okay, this is an expensive watch. How many of you have a Rolex Daytona? You do? Oh, all right. Oh, the two of you who have Rolex Daytona. You have two of those. Are you hiring? Okay, well, it's a fancy watch. It comes with an inner box and an outer box and a hang tag and various instructions, and then Rolex comes with a nice bag you can put this in. The thing is, this is a fake. I paid 139 euros for it. It came from China. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing this watch, because if I wear that watch, that makes me a fake too, because I know it. This is where we get into UX charlatans. Now, the big problem is there are people who don't know that they're fakes and still try to tell us what to do. These people are even more dangerous, and that's kind of the next slide. You don't want to hire a fake. You don't want to buy a fake. And by the way, if anyone wants a really cheap Rolex, let me know. I know, I bought it to take pictures. I've taken my pictures. I don't need the damn watch. So moving on, truth or consequences. We've talked a lot about research today. I'd like to introduce you to three gentlemen who you may or may not know. The first is John Snow. He was a physician, a doctor in London. Ignaz Semmelweis, who was a Hungarian doctor who was working in Vienna. And George Taylor, who was an efficiency expert in the United States. Let me tell you some stories. John Snow was very concerned as a doctor about a cholera outbreak in 1854 in London. Lots of people were dying. And he started to chart out where the deaths had occurred. And he found a great concentration here around this pump. This is where people were pumping up water to make food, to drink. And sure enough, when they went down and investigated the cistern, the thing that collects rainwater and all, there was a crack, and there was raw sewage that was flowing into what was supposed to be clean water. That's good research. Interesting observation. This is from the Vienna Maternity Hospital. And now we're over to Semmelweis. Semmelweis was concerned that the maternity hospital had a far higher incidence of something called puerperal fever, infant death, than almost any other hospital in Europe, or at least in Austria. And he could not figure out why. And the other interesting thing was he found out that the midwives, the women who were not physicians but were professionals in delivering babies, those babies didn't die. It was when the doctors delivered them that the babies died. And so, all right, so what's going on here? So he started observing the situation, and it turned out that many of the physicians were coming directly from autopsy, where they'd been cutting up bodies, and then they walk over and they deliver a baby. They're not washing their hands. Now, he tried to convince the doctors to wash their hands in chlorinated lime, which would disinfect them. And mind you, people didn't know a whole lot about bacteria back then. This is before Robert Koch. This is before Louis Pasteur. But his observation was right, and the disinfectant helped. And when he finally got people to accept this, the rates fell to where they would be for other hospitals. So you got to observe the data. And often there will be two different pieces of data that need to be put together in some way before you figure out what the problem is. And then finally, this is George Taylor, the hemline index. The hemline index tells you that the shorter people's dresses are, the better the economy. I saw a lot of short dresses today, so I'm very optimistic. These are two things that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But often when people talk about big data or whatever, this is exactly the kind of bullshit that the clients say, oh, no, we've got to do something about that. Where's that wine? It's crazy. And you're saying, well, yeah, man, this is back in the 1930s and George Taylor and who cares? You know what I found the day before yesterday? This. The number of people who drowned by falling in a swimming pool and the films Nicolas Cage appeared in. It's the hemline index again. This kind of stuff shows up all the time, and if people think there really is a correlation between these two data sets, you're going to be in trouble. We're all going to be in trouble pretty soon. As soon as I get finished. How's my time? My time is awful. This is a British Halifax bomber, and this is a chart that the RAF, the Royal Air Force, made where they're looking at planes that return after a bombing mission to find out where they're damaged. And they say, well, a lot of damage there. These are areas that we need to reinforce. We need better armor. Well, you put more armor on an airplane, it gets heavier, and the heavier an airplane can't fly quite as far on a tank of gas. The problem, what is the problem with this idea? What? Survival bias. That's exactly what it is. Because they need to be looking, what happened to the planes that didn't come home? They were getting shot in the engines, and the engines were catching fire, or the pilots got shot, or the tails got shot off. This is a very misleading chart. And so we can get a lot of data thrown at us that may not be relevant. So the point is, certainly we should do our own research. We don't necessarily need to trust things, particularly if it comes from the marketing department. But you've got to make sure that you're interpreting correctly, and sometimes the easy answer is not the correct one. I was doing user research in Heathrow Airport for British Airways back around 1985, and we wanted to identify what were the things that customers were upset about. What were the KPIs? And number one on the list that I got from British Airways was flying on time. Well, after about half a day, I stopped asking that question because people were screaming, "You're supposed to goddamn fly on time. That's why we have a schedule. We have other flights to catch. There are people getting us at the airport. How dare you ask? You're just supposed to do that." So, okay. So flying on time was not what... Are you sending me a signal or are you just hot? No, all right. So you've got to watch out with it. I'll tell you, it was very scary, being there all nice and painted in a suit and a tie and asking people what were the things that were important. 2 of the top things weren't even on the list. So research is good. Process and pedantry. I loved Rhea's presentation this morning. Is Rhea still here? Rhea, God bless you, dear. You said so many things. You also talked about chefs. We can talk about that later. This is Scrum. How many of you have practiced Scrum? Oh, that's a depressing number. Right. Now, we're all pretending to be agile, all right? And that means to be able to move quickly and easily, mentally quick and resourceful, blah, blah, blah. And so we have to put this into some kind of a format we understand. So the Scrum Masters are taught, these are the 3 basic Scrum questions, and they get asked at the early meetings. The first is, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And what is blocking your progress? Okay, so far so good. Let's talk about Christopher Columbus. Okay, Chris, what did you do yesterday? Well, I sailed west. What are you going to do today? I'm going to sail back to where I was yesterday. What's blocking your product? It's the fucking Scrum meetings. Rhea said this is dogma, and dogma is not necessarily a good thing. And so I'd like to present a process that I think that even Rhea will agree with. And it's Vishnu. So I want to hear you all say this. It's important that you internalize these things. Duvishnui. It's right up there. Just pronounce it. Yes. Well, no, acronyms are very good. And just to introduce this to you, it basically is you do what you need to do to get the shit done. That is the process. And sometimes it's A, and sometimes it's B, and sometimes if I kick the wine over, then my process up here is going to change. That's being agile. So don't become a slave to the process. Break the rules when you need to, and accept that things never go as planned. Like, don't ask people in an interview, is flying on time important for you? Man, I almost got killed. I mean, security would come over and, what did you do to those people? Okay. 1984 plus 39. 1984 is a book written in 1949 by George Orwell, and it's very scary how many of the things he describes in this have come to pass. We have the telescreen. We have smart TVs that listen to us. My wife and I can have the TV off, and we'll talk about something, and suddenly I start getting ads on my Amazon and Facebook feed. So, like, okay, who has been listening to this? I found this, football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizon of their minds to keep them in control was not difficult. This he wrote in 1949. And this is exactly what we have today. I mean, half the ads on Danish TV are for online casinos, or football, or betting, or beer they can't advertise, but they figure other ways to work that in. Okay, that was interesting. What's supposed to be there? Oh, a line, yes. I was thinking, things move very quickly in our community. And I couldn't quite figure out, it's like we have human years and we have dog years. So one dog year is like 7 human years, or something like that. So can we figure out how long an internet year is? Well, first I needed to find an industrial process of a traditional manufacturing process, and I hit upon automobiles. So we have the first commercial automobile about 1896. Then we have the first series-produced automobiles. They happened about 1902. We have the first assembly line, that's Henry Ford, 1908. And then finally, we have the Wall Street crash. So let's put some other numbers down at the bottom there. Well, that's when we had the first commercial web browser. That's where we had the first commercial websites. That's where we had the first commercial content management systems, and the dot bomb. And what's interesting about this is that those two lines parallel themselves a lot. So in terms of our development and what we're doing as UX designers, basically we're back in the 80s someplace. We're not where we should be at this point, or where we can be. That is, in fact, Sofia, Bulgaria. You can see it because it starts with a C. Yeah. For all of you who aren't Bulgarian. Yeah. All three of you. Now, this is stuff that I worry about. I'll tell you some stories where technically I've used up my time and I don't give a shit. Can I go on a little more? Yeah. All right. All right, we have artificial intelligence and we have ChatGPT, and artificial intelligence is supposed to be a machine with a conscience, except machines don't have a conscience. They learn the conscience from us. Then we have machine learning, which is just basic algorithms. Self-learning, reinforcement learning, this is kind of what we call generative AI these days. Supervised learning based on a data set. And then deep learning, which is these deep neural networks. We know that if somebody has a stroke, that the brain sort of moves functions. And, well, all right, so we're going to teach somebody to speak again or to walk or to do something else. And it just moves functions to another part of the brain. Nobody quite knows how the neurons and the axons and the synapses work. But that's also what happens in these deep neural networks. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in the next couple of years. And that is also where we can also get into trouble. The point is that this is a pub sign from England, which of course is very funny, except to the machine, squirrel is rooster. They don't have a sense of humor. Garbage in, garbage out. We've seen it with Tay, which was Microsoft's avatar on Twitter. And within 48 hours, she had become a raving right-wing racist lunatic because she was being fed all of this stuff from the right wing. And this is still happening with Alexa. Alexa thinks that the election in the United States was rigged because it got into its system that it should be reading something called Rumble, which is a very right-wing blog. And of course, we all know that blogs are the truth. ChatGPT. It's fun to play with. I figured I'd better search something that I actually know something about, so I looked for myself. I figured I'm on safe ground there. It went pretty well. Most of this is stolen from Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not necessarily as good as it should be. But the last line, this is really interesting. In addition to his work in UX, Reiss is also an accomplished musician and songwriter. He has released several albums of original music and has written songs for a number of well-known Danish artists. I'm still waiting for my royalty checks. I don't know where they got that. I started to Google other people with similar names and said, who in Denmark does ChatGPT think I am? Never did figure that out. And things get posted on Amazon, and then, or I'm not on Amazon, on Wikipedia. And it's very difficult to get lies off of Wikipedia. Believe me, I've tried. And some of this is going to also show up in these AI models. The post-pandemic blues. You know, during the pandemic, suddenly companies were realizing, hey, e-commerce actually works. That's cool. Did they do anything about building shared references so that people actually knew what they were buying online? No, they didn't do any of that. So I find it very depressing that the companies have understood that e-commerce is important, but they don't do anything about it. Let me tell you about my daughter-in-law's earrings. She had found some earrings online that she really wanted. And Copenhagen was more or less in lockdown at that point. And so she went to the website and she ordered them. And she put them in the shopping basket. And when she went to pay, there was nothing in the shopping basket. She figured she must have done something wrong. So she did it again. Then she did it a third time. And then finally she just called the store and somebody was actually there. And they said, oh, nobody ever buys anything on our website. Let that sink in for a moment. Their shopping cart doesn't work. And said, oh, nobody ever buys anything on our website. This is the kind of low-hanging fruit that we should be able to solve, and that will increase the revenue for our employers. I didn't want to go there. I'm not there yet. Morals and ethics, Apple and Google, I mean, they're making all kinds of decisions on our behalf that aren't true. For example, this is Gay Pride Month. Well, Apple has a gay pride flag for the Apple Watch, which they do not sell. They sell the watch, but they will not let you download that screen in the Russian Federation because it's illegal to display the rainbow flag in the Russian Federation. You can go to jail for that. But there's some software engineer in Cupertino, California that is making a decision as to what the gay community in the Russian Federation should be doing. I'm sorry, it's not Apple's decision. Google withdrew from China because they were being moral, and then they decided, oh, well, no, maybe we'd like to get in there anyway because there's lots of money. The Chinese wanted them to censor results. Man, you know, there are problems, and both Apple and Google keep asking us for more and more personal information. It's very, very scary. Accessibility, yeah, it's the law, but who cares? It is incredibly irritating. It's all part of the World Wide Web Consortium rules, which are, in fact, laws within the EU, which is the same as ADA 508 in the United States, the Americans with Disability Act. But people sort of don't care. No, we're going to post a video. No, we don't care that it's not closed caption. No, we can't be bothered to make a transcript. This is something that we also need to deal with. And then finally, sustainability. What are we doing? I mean, I've heard so many explanations as to what sustainability, how we can I'm breaking in some teeth for a friend. I'm at that age. We haven't really cracked that, you know, and how do we make things better? I mean, my goodness, you know, Google's server park in Denmark uses more electricity. No, or is it Apple? It's either Apple or Google. One of them, no, it's Apple because Tim Cook was just in town. It uses more electricity than the next largest town in Denmark. Okay. So maybe, can we limit server calls? Do we really need all these apps on our phone? I don't know. And that leads me to the last slide. Sorry, I just haven't learned it yet. I'm interested. Certainly we will find a solution, but we have so much we can do. We're in the 80s in terms of our development, but it's all you, particularly those of you who are new to this industry. For God's sakes, don't make the same mistakes we did, but learn from them and do something better. I'd love to come to this conference again in 30 years and see where we're at. Probably not going to happen, but who knows? This I love. Cease not to learn until thou cease to live. Think that day lost, wherein thou drawest no letter to make thyself more learned, wiser, and better. Gilles de Pibrac, French philosopher. And that's kind of been my life motto. So in parting, the big message: learn, share, teach, and that's how you change the world. Oh, it's only 5 minutes over. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.